Chrissy Rig, ole, ole, ole. Chrissy Rig, ole, 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 ole. He hates Newcastle, he's better than Porto. Chrissy Rig, ole, 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 again. Chrissy Rig, ole, 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 ole. He hates Newcastle, he's better than Porto. Chrissy Rig, ole, ole, ole. Chrissy Rig, ole, ole, ole. Chrissy Rig, ole, ole, ole. He hates Newcastle, he's better than Porto. Chrissy Rig, ole, 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 again.
Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk podcast as we preview Friday's big game with Leeds United at the Stadium of Light. The lads responded perfectly to the weekend defeated Watford by pretty much swatting aside Derby County on Tuesday night, and a similar result against Friday's opponents would top off a really outstanding start to the campaign. But whether we can do it or not is another question entirely. To let us know what we've got in store, I'm joined by Leeds United fan Scott. Scott, how are you, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Graham. How are you?
I'm okay. You know what? I always do that. I was going, how are you doing, mate? And forget, like, we've had a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah, that's
I do it so naturally.
But it's funny, actually. Obviously, we're going to record one on my channel afterwards. And I was like, should I say... Because when I have people on, I always say, how are you doing? And I'm like, well, we're going to have a 30-minute conversation or whatever, and then jump onto mine and have another 30-minute conversation. I'm going to say, how are you doing? After I've talked to you for about near on an hour. So, yeah, that didn't make any sense. But I know the feeling well.
Behind the curtain of podcasters. Start straight from the top. There's tons to get to, as always. But while we were beating Derby, you were drawing with Norwich. A 1-1 draw at Carrow Road is not the worst result on the planet. You were both quite close to each other in the league table last season. But how was the performance?
I think for the most part, we dominated the game, but we've got a proper problem at the moment. I talked about it sort of a bit on my channel yesterday. Sort of after the game, we literally really struggle at sort of containing the transition. And even though we had a lot of the ball, we didn't really do much with it. And then they actually probably had more of the chances sort of on the counter attack against us. And we thought, I mean, we're probably going to get into it, but I think if you're looking at sort of Leeds right now and how he can get us, then in transitional moments on the attack will be the method. And it was just the same. It was the same sort of story. Then second half, we sort of went a bit dead, and then we've got a few players that have got real quality, the like of Ramazani, Nonto, etc. Nonto was brilliant yesterday, and we just opened him up in an instant, and it was just like a moment. And then from then, Falk made subs and sort of killed the game really, which was annoying because I thought we should have gone for it, but he basically took off all our attacking threat, brought on Bamford, etc. And the game was just over really, and it ended in a draw. But yeah, it was an all right point. But we've got obviously Hughes coming up, and then we've got Sheffield United at home next too. So it'd be nice to get a win at Norwich to sort of have that in hand, if that makes sense, with the difficult fixtures coming up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you know, as Sunderland fans, we've been there on the back of a really good player final defeat, if there's such a thing, Charlton 1998, but we've also been on the back of a really bad one. Neither of us are strangers to the playoffs, and you can either respond by like bouncing straight back and just going up automatic promotion. You don't lose many games, in my experience, the one time it happened. And then the other times you carry that hangover and you kind of stutter at the start. You haven't stuttered your fourth, but at the same time, you're also not in the automatics. How have Leeds responded to that playoff final defeat to Southampton? Because it probably wasn't the performance you expected on the day.
Yeah, well, the performance against Southampton, we'd already been beat 3 times. And I think Russell Martin sort of had Daniel Farke's number, really. And then obviously they beat us for the 4th time in the final. In the final, I mean, we just didn't play anything like ourselves. I thought we were good at the start, actually, and then they scored, and it sort of, we didn't really have an answer for it. And then obviously in the summer we lose big players, the likes of Crysense Somerville, player of the season last year, and quite comfortably in my opinion. I think Dewsbury as well was a real starlet last year in the Championship. You'll probably obviously face them both, and you understand that, but. Yeah, Somerville was absolutely outstanding for us last year. So he was a massive loss to West Ham. And then obviously we lost Rutter on the last possible day that we could before his release clause expired, which was another massive loss for us. And then we obviously played the first game and draw at Portsmouth. And I think there's sort of a bit of worries in the fan base, however good the performance was, because the truth of the matter was we should have beaten 4 and 5. And we ended up drawing 3-3 because Melier threw in his own net. We gave away a stupid penalty and they scored a worldie. And these things can happen. And then we've sort of built into the season from then. But then we had a massive downturning hit when Burnley came to Leeds and sort of they sort of neutralised us and came out with a 1-0 win at Ellen Road, and that sort of probably put a cent in our sail again. And then since then, we've sort of been back on an uphill trajectory, winning the next two. And then obviously last night we drew. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag to start with. We have only lost one game so far. And we haven't lost away from home yet in the league either. So yeah, it has been a mixed bag.
I like that you said yet about not losing away from home. I've got a Leeds supporter in my family, so I know the emotional attachment that came with Marcelo Bielsa. I think look, a lot of people don't like Leeds. You know that, I know that. But a lot of people like Marcelo Bielsa anyway, which probably shows you the standard that football held him in. Jesse Marsch came in, and I felt like I was the only man in the world that actually quite liked him. I felt like no one else did.
Yeah,
yeah, he didn't win you over, shall we say. And Big Sam, look, we don't need an introduction to him, but he only had 4 games. So then Daniel Farke comes in. But from the outside looking in, it feels a lot like Leeds have had like the high life with Bielsa, and you haven't really been able to replicate someone who A, you like as much, B, plays as good football, and C, you have so much respect for. Where's Daniel Farke in this list? Is he? Because it feels like he's not quite hitting the Bielsa, but he's not quite hitting the Jesse Marsch either.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. That I think my feeling was last year our team should have gone up automatically. I think the fact that Ipswich finished above us, look, Ipswich were unbelievable. I think their manager's probably one of the best. I think he'll go on to do great things again. I think he's an absolutely unbelievable coach. Almost Bielsa in like what the achievement he did really with the team that they had. Maybe even we could say better with the team they had. But there's no way that Leeds team should have finished behind him. There's absolutely no way. I mean, we had a front line last year of Somerville, Nonto, and Rutter. Now we sold Somerville. He went on a release clause for 25 million. Rutter's probably I'd have thought the worst standard of the 3, and he went for 40. So I think you've probably got a 3 behind the striker there, over £100 million of talent. Plus we had the likes of Dan James, Jane Nancy on the bench, who probably start for a lot of Championship teams. And you've got Ethan Ampadu, Strauss, Rodons, there was an absolute abundance of quality there. But I think there's sort of where Leeds fans stay on it, and this is sort of my opinion. He sort of failed well enough to not lose his job, if that makes sense. Like promotion was no doubt the aim. We had to really go up last year. That was the whole sort of feeling around Leeds United, and I think that's what the 49ers thought would happen. You employ a manager that's won the league back-to-back times, he's been in the division, that's what you expect is going to happen. But then it doesn't happen, and we obviously get losing the playoffs, having been in a really good position of being top at this sort of Easter weekend. But as I said, he did get 90 points, and I think the sort of logic this year is that, look, if you can do something similar again, then you'll probably get us up this time, because the top teams, I believe, this year probably won't get the same amount of points that maybe Leicester and Ipswich did last year, and that's sort of where we all stand on that. But I don't hold him like Bielsa. Like when Bielsa was sacked, I was absolutely gutted. I won't be absolutely gutted if Falk gets sacked. I don't really have that connection with him. He's sort of just a mercenary that's just getting me up, in my view. And I know that sounds a bit harsh, but that's sort of how I feel with him. He's just here to do the job. And then if we go up and he doesn't do that well, which I don't think he probably would, because I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League, I'd be more than happy to move him on. I wouldn't have that. I don't have that attachment with him at all, really. And that's sort of where I'm at with it, really, with Daniel Farke.
It's interesting, the Bielsa thing. I'm not going to miss an opportunity to speak about him because I really like him.
Yeah.
You just think if you like football, you like Bielsa because he's such a football purist. And I'm probably talking about something that doesn't really matter, but I'm talking about something that interests me, so I'm going to go with it. Bielsa seems to hold like respect wherever he goes. And I remember when he got sacked, and I remember thinking, that's a bit odd. And then you'd been on a bad run of form. I get that. But we're a couple of years on from his sacking now, and I think a lot of Leeds fans didn't agree with it at the time. But how much of a mistake was that for Leeds, considering where you are now and where Bielsa was? Or is that just rose-tinted glasses? Was Bielsa's time actually at an end?
Yeah, it's a funny one, because the team, I would argue the team we've got now is better than the team that Bielsa had in the Premier League. That's how terrible that team was that we had. We basically, in the summer, from all accounts, he'd been doing it, 3 years? We finished 9th, and then he goes to the board and says, look, this is from Phil Hay, Athletic at the time. He didn't work there anymore, but he did. Said that Bielsa went to the board and said, I can't do this anymore. The way I play this, we're going to need 100 million quid. I've done it with the likes of Stuart Dallas, Aylans, etc. We need money pumping in now. And the board basically said, well, and then he said, I think Bielsa basically said in that interview, in that conversation with the board, if you're not going to do it, just sack me, because it's not going to work. Then we decided to do neither of what he said, sack him nor back him. And then he ends up getting the sack because the results are not there. I think in terms of if the club would be in a better hands under Bielsa, if I could swap back for Bielsa right this second, I absolutely would. But the question would be for me is I think there's a chance still that we'd have gone down with Bielsa if we had kept him. I think there's quite a good chance. We conceded the most goals in the league at that point, according to the record that we now beat because Javi Gracia beat it the year after. But yeah, I think if we'd have gone down, would he have actually stayed? And that's the question more than anything. Because if he hadn't stayed, then we'd probably be in the same situation anyway. But if he had stayed, then obviously that would have been in a much more advantageous position. So yeah, the Bielsa one is an interesting one. But the truth is that Bielsa was hiding a lot of the sort of nonsense that was going on behind the scenes, really. When we've got such a iconic figure, almost like Sir Alex did at Man United in that sense. Really, and you've seen the sort of uncovering of that, especially, I mean, even at the weekend. So, but yeah, that is sort of what's happened with Bielsa. But obviously, it's a completely different board now as well because we had a change of ownership when we went down. The 49ers are in charge now, who only own 10% at the time. So that is slightly different, and I do think we've got a better structure. But yeah, I can't answer that if Bielsa would have been in a better position really because I'm not 100% sure.
Looking at the players that you let go in the summer, you've touched on a few of them already. Somerville obviously was a big mess. Ruta went for more money, but you touched on the reasons behind that. But Glenn Kamara went as well. Archie Gray went. And look, there's been a bit more chat with Archie Gray because it's come up recently because we've obviously got Chris Rigg. And people are saying, well, if you get 30 million for Archie Gray, how much is he worth in X, Y, and Z? And in reality, neither Leeds fans wanted to lose Archie Gray. And we really don't want to lose Chris Rigg. It's not a conversation I want to really have because to me, those players can be priceless. But how big of a miss have the other players been, like the likes of Kamara, the likes of Archie Gray and Ruta? Because I think if I'm asking you how big of a miss Somerville is, I'm pretty much asking you a really obvious question. What about the other players that left for big money as well?
Yeah, funny. It's funny when you talk about Gray. If we start with him, he's an interesting one because I remember talking to you on a podcast a few weeks ago, and I said sort of joked that you should do not play Chris Rigg at right back, whatever you do, because that's what we did with Archie Gray. So it depends, because I think in centre mid it'd been fantastic for us. But if I'm looking at a right back, who's actually a better right back, Archie Gray last year or Jayden Bogle this year? Well, so far the answer is probably that Archie Gray is. But I do think this season Bogle will be a better right back than Grays, if that makes sense. And I think that's what the board looked at. Let's cash in on this amazing youngster. And we basically, I think we got 30 million plus Joe Rodon for him. So, and I think Rodon's probably valued about 10 million quid around. So it's around 40 million for him. And I looked and I thought, well, all right. So you lose Gray, but then you've got Bogle in that position. So even though they're different. That Bogle probably will never be a top-end Premier League player. Archie will definitely probably be a top-end Premier League player. But right now, who's going to be a better option for us at right back? Well, probably Jayden Bogle. And that's sort of where you toss it up. Kamara, again, we bought for about 5 million, and we got a bid near £10 million in the summer. 28-year-old. It sort of made sense to move him on, in a sense, if you're looking at sort of a money ball scheme as such, which I guess everyone in the Championship's probably got to do. So that sort of made a lot of sense. Kamara at the times wasn't starting for us anyway last year, anyway, in certain games. He did in the finals and later on in the season, but he was from Christmas onwards probably in and out of the team. He was very good at keeping the ball, turning it over, etc. But he never chipped in any goals, any assists or anything like that. And I think when we looked at something that we probably need to upgrade in the summer, actually getting goals from everywhere was something that we probably looked at and went, yes, that's something we need. And that's what Angus Kinnear, who's our CEO, went on a podcast recently and sort of suggested that. So you look at Jayden Bogle, well, he scores goals. Tanaka we brought in, he got 8 goals last year at Dusseldorf. And I think the rest of the team, I tried to add goals to the team as best we can. And that's something that Kamara never did. So I wasn't that bothered about Kamara. Rutter was the one that was probably like, because I thought he'd stay. And he was the one that probably hit us quite hard because you could argue Brendan Downs is probably a more polished number 10, but Rutter was just completely unique in what he was able to do. He was like a sort of, you could just give him the ball and out of absolutely nothing, he could make something happen. Like the best example I can give you is like the Leicester game at home last year. We actually won the game 3-1 and we were terrible for 80 minutes. And Rutter played well for 10, and he was involved in all 3 goals. And that was Rutter. He could play it horrendously, and he could look horrendous. And I've seen Brighton fans already saying how bad he looks, but he's so unique in what he can do that all he has to do is play. All he has to do is play well for 10 minutes, and he's going to cause absolute havoc. And he did in that game, and we ended up winning the game. So I think he will probably look at that, especially when you try to break down a low block and stuff, which we will have to do a lot. He will be a massive miss, Rutter. There's just no doubt about it. And we didn't get a replacement, really. We've got Brendan Aronson back, and he was on loan at Union Berlin last year. We didn't actually buy anybody to fulfill that Rutter role, which was probably a shame looking back.
Quite interesting that Aronson coming back and Notto, because this time, well, not this time last year, but around about this time last year, there was the whole business with some of these not wanting to come back. Now, I don't know which ones necessarily. I remember Notto being like, I don't want to play. They've kind of turned that round a bit, which is it's probably a positive as well, isn't it? They want to be at Leeds at the moment, because I think a lot of them didn't want to be there at the end of last season. Well, last summer, the summer before.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Nonto was refusing to play, but actually, after the transfer window in the summer, this the day after the transfer window, Nonto signed a new contract. So I think that's probably reserved the fact that he's probably quite happy at Leeds now. The other thing I would say is that I do question the timing of why I released that straight the day after the transfer window, which suggests to me he probably had a release clause that wasn't triggered, and probably said to the club, "Look, if they don't trigger the release clause, I'll sign a new contract." That's what I got from that. But I might be reading too much into that. But yeah, he's turned a corner. Brendan Aronson again, his performance levels. I think we're Leeds fans are fickle, aren't you? We all are. If a player's playing well, what you do? Like there was a guy behind me in the first game against Portsmouth when I went at the game, and he was like, "I will never say Brendan Aronson's game. I will never celebrate a goal." And within a few minutes, he'd scored, Brendan Aronson, and this guy was jumping up and down like a nut job. So it's just an absolute nonsense as far as I'm aware. So he's come in and done all right, but he's not Rutter. He's not like he'd never be bought from a Premier League team for £40 million. We were stupid enough to pay 35. I have no idea what we saw for 35 million quid, but that's one of the reasons we're probably in the Championship. Really poor recruitment in the Premier League. Really,
was that a Jesse Marsh signing?
Yeah. Basically all them signings failed. Tyler Adams was good, but he got injured all the time. Sinistero was good, but he got injured all the time. Between them, that's about 40 million quid. Brendan Aronson was, I think, about 35. He was dreadful. Christensen, we bought a £10 million right back. He is the worst footballer I've ever seen in a Leeds shirt, without a shadow of a doubt. I don't know how he's on loan at in the Bundesliga this year. I can't remember who he's gone to. I've blocked him out, but yeah, he's gone there. But he was awful, and they were basically all misses. And I think when you miss so many times and you sell Rafinha and Phillips, you're probably in a bit of bother, and that's sort of what happened.
I quite like Jesse Marsh, bless him, but I know Leeds fans don't.
He
I don't know
comes
what I like
across
about
really
him.
well.
That was it. Yeah, he came across like a nice fella.
Me and my dad were saying this the other day watching match. I don't know if you watched Monday Night Football, but Graham Potter was on this week.
Yeah, I did actually.
And me and my dad were like, well, we know Graham Potter's a better coach than Jesse Marsh. But if you watch both Monday Night Footballs, when Marsh was on and when Potter was on, you could probably Jesse Marsh makes a good account of himself at making him look really good, even though the way he played was abysmal. I mean, we just didn't use the wings. We didn't use the either wing side of the pitch, and we had Rafinha, and we weren't using the wings. And then I think we played Brighton at home, the second last game of the season. We needed to win. We ended up drawing, but after about 60 minutes, Rafinha, you were like moaning at Marsh, and then you see him just stand on the right hand side, far on the wing, and then we end up playing so much better. And it's like, this is just so embarrassing. And then he's on long throws, he's Rafinha, and it's like, what's going on?
Bless him. On to this season, tell you what I found really weird. I looked through the results that you had. I watched the game against Borough. I seen the goals against Pompey. I didn't watch the full game. So you conceded 6 goals in your first 2 games. All right, the Borough game was a League Cup game, fair enough. And both teams were changed. But you've only conceded twice since then, in 7, including the Norwich game. Sometimes you can see an issue and it takes a few games to fix it. Seems that if there was any problems defensively, you fixed it. What's changed since that Middlesbrough game and the Pompey game?
Yeah, well, as I said, I was at the Pompey game, and I think if you look at sort of, I know I'm not a huge fan of XG and stuff, but I do think it can point you in the right direction. And I believe Portsmouth's XG without the penalty. Obviously, penalties about, I think, about 0.7, something like that. I think they had something, I think they had less than one. So, and like one of them, Melier, like he literally, there were a lad behind me at the game and he like, I'd have saved it. And I think you were right. It was that bad. It was that bad keeping, and then they scored an absolute worldie and didn't really create anything else except the penalty. So I think that was a bit of a freak. And then the cup game was a completely different team. We didn't play our full strength team. So I was never like I do a show sort of at work where I would sort of look at the new EFL fantasy game with to talk about who was a good option really. And I constantly said to him that Leeds defensively will be really good. And everyone go, yeah, but they're 6-2, 6-2. So no, I've watched them both. And our defense, I think we've got the best defense in the league, if I'm being honest, in terms of Struijk and Road. And I think they're the best, especially centre half wise, but they're the best too. So I don't think we've got a problem defensively at all, actually. I think if anything's going to cost us promotion, it'll probably be going forward, if anything.
I wanted to ask you about Melier because, and I've got to be honest, maybe I'm wrong here, and someone can quote, like someone can tell me and quote tweet whatever. But the save he made at the Stadium like last season from Jensen Seelt was one of the best saves I've ever seen in the flesh. But then I'll occasionally watch him do something very similar a few weeks later, and then I'll see him throw the ball in the back of his own net or like make a huge mistake. Is he rated as highly as he was when he first came, or is he kind of that player where you know he can drop a ball at any point?
He's dreadful, man.
That's
He's absolutely awful. I mean, look, I put a tweet out today. I don't know if you've seen it. There were a penalty. Last night we conceded a penalty against Josh Sargent, and I have never, ever, ever blamed a goalkeeper on a penalty in my life.
I did see this actually, yeah.
That is the worst attempt at saving a penalty I think I've ever seen, and I'm not even joking. I know people say that as a bit of high ball attack. That is the worst attempt. Like I think all he needs to do is put his foot out, and he saves it with his foot, and it's literally next to him. And he's tried to dive onto the floor like he's doing, I don't know, some flips at the Olympics a few months ago. Like I have absolutely no idea what he's doing, and his distribution, by the way, is so bad. It is unbelievable. Do you know, like when you try to pass out from the back, sometimes you might clip it to a fullback. He genuinely can't play a clip to a fullback. Like he cannot do that at all. The amount of possession we gave up because he either underhits it and they're going straight at us, the other team, or he overhits it straight into touch is unbelievable. And even in yesterday's game, he had to play it short to Bogle, like just a pass on the floor. He didn't have to clip it over anyone, and he's still not out of play. I don't understand, and I've never got it. We have, for me, we've got one of the best players in the league in every position, probably top 5. I think our squad's pretty good this year compared to probably the rest of the league.
Some people will find that arrogant, but your favourites to go up.
Yeah, no,
there's a reason for that.
I think. Look, it probably is an arrogant take, but I think in terms of everyone I've talked to, basically besides outside Leeds and the bookies and everything, I think that's probably about right. In fairness, but it annoys me to the life that we don't have that in goal. Like I don't know what. Like we seem to have a club gone. Oh yeah, this is all important, but we'll just leave the keeper. He's crap, but we'll just leave it. And I have no idea why we do it. Because for me. We're just throwing away points. Like Portsmouth game, yes, Aronson misses a sitter. But at the time when he throws in the ball into his own net, Melier, we're winning the game 1-0 and we are battering him, like annihilating him. We hit the post 4 times, I think 3 times in the first 10 minutes. Like it was just now an absolute battering. And I was watching thinking, my God, we look pretty good here. And then he throws in his net, the only shot he's had, and you're like, well, that's just exactly what we didn't need now because it brings them straight back into the game. And then they score a worldie, and you're like, oh my God. But yeah, it just frustrates me because, as I said, we've got some of the best players in the league, yet we just don't care about the keeper. I mean, he's actually made him vice captain this summer. He couldn't. I don't know. If he captained the boat, they'd be going underwater, mate. It's genuinely he's horrendous.
He honestly pulled off one of the best saves I've ever seen at the Stadium of Light. But like every time I watch him, I see him do that once every 6 months, pull off a worldie of a save, and then I see him drop in the back of his own net like 3 or 4 times. I've always wondered. It's funny you mentioned about the squad and stuff like that, because look, there'll be people listening to it because we all think our team's the best, and there will be people listening across the board that thinks, Leeds arrogant, because you've got that card. Let's be honest, we know that. We have. Of course you have, but Leeds on paper and in the bookies and everything like that are the favourites to go up. So what that then creates as well, which kind of wonderfully brings me on to the next question, is pressure. And one thing I think not when I was younger, but in the past 20 years that Leeds haven't dealt with is pressure. So I think if you went up automatic, it wouldn't surprise anyone. I think if you went through the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise anyone. You can see the quality that's in the squad. If we beat Leeds on a Friday, we suddenly start going, well, hang on, top of the league, and we'll beat Leeds. There is an element of people are expecting you to go up, which does create pressure. So if Leeds don't go up this season, what does that do for Leeds?
Well, look, if we don't go up this year, we are in a mess, I think, because in the first year when you go down, you get 42 million given to you. In the second year, you get 35 million. So it's less, but it's not like that's not horrifically less. In the third year, it goes from 35 to 15. So it's basically over then, and you're almost expected if you look at it that when you go down, you can keep a lot of your big players on the books, maybe get rid of a few. Same sort of second year, you might have to get rid of a few more, and then third year you've got to get them all gone. So I think this year we have, as I said, I think we've got a really good squad. But there is no way in a million years we'd have a really good squad next year. And I think we've got a manager right now that I'm sort of like, we don't want a project at Leeds. We just want to go up. Like it's not. I don't care how the football is. I don't care about anything. All I care is that Leeds get promoted this season. That is it. Whereas I think if we didn't go up this year, you're probably looking at sort of more of a project manager, that's someone that's going to build his own squad with good additions here and there. But I think right now we're sort of just throwing quite a bit of money at it and just get us up, Daniel. But yeah, I think if we don't go up in this year, we're in a severe mess. But as you said, I think like even last night the commentators are saying like, oh, it's a big game for Norwich because they've got Leeds coming to town, and that is what we're facing this year. And Sunderland will face that as well because let's be honest, when you play, I don't know, Derby away this year, it's something you probably can relate to actually, especially when you're even in League One and stuff. You are the big game, like you are. That's like I remember we were close to Bolton when I was at university, and the one game I went to was the Sunderland Bolton game, and that's because I cared because Sunderland were in it. And I think it's the same probably for both our clubs in that sense. So there is an added pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Leeds, I think it's a combination of the fact that the generation before me seen Leeds being successful. Like, do I like Manchester United? No, I find it quite funny when they fail. I'm not going to lie, because they were so successful. There is one person I wanted to ask you about, two technically, and I don't know why I'm asking about this guy because there's no point. He's not going to play. He got injured yesterday. Shock horror. Haven't seen much of him since he signed. But apparently Jan, not Ian Poveda, we technically signed him from Leeds because his contract came to the end and we brought him from there. He didn't really play much for his last season, obviously, at Chef Wed. What kind of reception would he have received and how was he remembered?
So he was brought in from Man City to Leeds, sort of I think he was on a free. Bielsa brought him through. He only ever played really one good game for Leeds, but it was a phenomenal game. He came on when we played Man City at home. We ended up drawing the game 1-1. At half time, I think we put Alioski to left back. He was playing left wing, and then brought Poveda on, and he was probably man of the match second half. He was that good. So there is definitely a player in Poveda. But since that game, I haven't really seen it. If I'm being totally honest, so. I'm not 100% sure. I think as a squad player, I think you've got relatively decent wingers anyway at this level, in fairness. So as a squad player, I think he'll be fine. But the only thing I would worry about if I was a Sunderland fan maybe is that I don't think we were bothered about giving him a new contract. So is he going to come to Sunderland and then be much better if you're trying to fight with us who have let him go on a free? Do you know what I mean? And I know that's a stupid sort of way to look at it, but I do think there's probably a bit of truth in that in terms of there's a reason. No Leeds fan was moaning that we let him go on a free this summer. I don't think anyone really cared. But there's potentially a good player in there, definitely.
Another person I completely forgot about until I went through your squad list and completely remembered that he had not as bad as probably it felt at the time spell here, but at the same time, he wasn't as successful as he would like to be, probably because of consequence and strikers being injured and him being put in a position that he's not used to. And I thought he'd do quite well when he came down. I thought, you know what, that kid will do all right. Put him in the number 10, will be fine. He was quite well liked by Leeds fans. But I haven't actually heard of him for ages. Joffrey Gelhardt, where is he? How's he doing? What's happened to him?
Yeah, Gelhardt, he came on last night, actually, for the first, I think it might have been the first game he's actually come on in.
So he's alive, we can clarify that.
He is alive, yeah. But he's not. It's a shame, actually, because when he was coming through at Leeds, he was class. Like he was like he said the reason we didn't go down the year before we actually went down is because probably we had Gellart as a young kid. Like he scored a goal against Norwich in the 94th minute to win us to win that game 2-1 at home. He set up the Brighton equaliser for Strauch with some unbelievable little bit of intricacy in the box, and he chipped it over to the far post, and Strauch headed it in. And it was sort of his goal without it being his goal, if that makes sense. The assist was the goal, if that in that sort of world. But it's just since he had the loan at Sunderland, really, where I thought he'd absolutely smash it. I was thinking, wow, what a signing that is for you when you got him off us. But it just hadn't really worked. He's just never progressed, really. And now he's fallen further and further behind in the pecking order at Leeds. And to be honest, he probably needs a move away from us now, if we're being totally honest. Which is a shame because I think, as I said, when he was coming through, I thought he looked outstanding for us. But basically, since Bielsa, he hasn't really. And this is a lot of players, really. Bielsa were that good that he sort of made everybody look good. But since there's quite a few players that we've got, younger players, etc., that basically when Bielsa's left, they just have looked garbage. And he's probably one of them, if we're being honest.
Yeah, he had an interesting time at Sunderland. He brought in as the 10, and then all of our strikers got injured like a day after he signed, and he got forced to play up front. And look, for me, that's not his role. I don't think it will be in the future either. But final 2 questions, and it's beginning to get my favourite question, especially since we saw Jack Clark. But this might be even more interesting because you touched on before, you feel like Leeds have got one of the stronger teams, and I'd agree with you on that as well. But if you could take one Sunderland player to fit into Leeds' team, who would it be and why?
The keeper, definitely.
Patterson
all day. Yeah, I think you've actually got better players than that. I'd love to take Chris Rigg off you, and we're not Birmingham, so I'm not saying that's going to happen. But yeah, I think we're pretty strong everywhere, but keeper we're crap. So I'd take your keeper all day. And I think he's pretty good, actually, Patterson. I think he's definitely top 5 in the league, if not one of the better, even higher than that.
Yeah, I like Pato. Yeah, I'll be with you on that. I'm going to agree on that. Final question. I got a prediction right on Monday, Tuesday, whenever I did the preview show. The first one I've had in about a year. So, look, I'll be honest, I'm not feeling hugely confident. I don't know why. I just feel Sunderland fans thinking, hang on a minute, we've won 6 out of 8 here. Why not feeling confident? Friday night at home, we beat them last year, X, Y, and Z. I just feel like law of averages as a Sunderland fan, for me to see 5 consecutive wins at home would be something I've never, ever experienced. I'm going to go score draw. I'm going to go 1-1. And I feel it'll be very similar to the game we played last year at the Stadium Light, but you'll actually get one back later on, which, to be honest, I think I'd take a draw.
If I was to guess, I mean, I might as well carry on this arrogant persona, really, aren't I? So I'm going to go that they're going to win.
Scott's a nice lad, really. He's a really nice lad for everyone listening. He's not arrogant. He's just a Leeds fan.
I'm just a Leeds fan. So I'm not arrogant in anything else, but when it's Leeds, it has to come out. I'll go 2-0 Leeds, I think. Yeah.
Got back your own team, mate, haven't you? You'll be wrong, but you've got to back your own team. Now watch you be right. Scott, thanks very much for coming on. I'm going to pop on your show after this, and we'll do the whole, let's pretend we haven't chatted for the last half an hour. If people want to jump on and listen and stuff like that, where can we find your stuff?
It's quite simple for me, really. Scott Worrall on everything, essentially YouTube, Twitter, that sort of thing. All Scott Worrall, and I've started this thing where I do like a live reaction after the game. I did it after the Norwich game yesterday, and I was like, this is all right, actually. So I might do that again after the Sunderland game.
We will tune in if you get beat.
To be honest, when you drew with us last year, that is the worst video I've ever filmed. I was so gutted. It was unbelievable. It was probably worse.